Welcome back, everyone. So for the past 8 weeks, we've been, carefully tracing how consciousness works, really focusing on how the I builds its own world. But today we're going to completely detonate that world. We're going to follow Emmanuel Levinas and witness something so powerful it just shatters that self-centered view we've been studying. This is where we learn how to describe ethics not as some choice we make, but as the very ground we're standing on, a demand that was placed on us before we could even think.
Okay, so let's map out where we're headed. Think of this as a sort of philosophical drama in 5 acts. We're going to start inside the self's cozy little fortress, and then we're going to watch it get breached by this violent interruption. From there, we'll look at the radical command this encounter gives us, see how the self gets totally remade in the process, and finally, we'll see how this whole experience provides a brand new foundation for doing philosophy. All right, first things first, we need to get a feel for the world that Levinas is rebelling against. And this should feel pretty familiar to you. It's the world of traditional philosophy, where the I is basically the sun at the center of the universe, and everything else, every other person is just a planet orbiting around it, getting all its meaning from its relationship to me. Levinas gives this worldview a name. He calls it totality. And when you're living in totality, another person isn't truly other. Nope. They're just an object for you to study, a character in your personal story, a neat little concept that your mind can grab, categorize, and basically consume. They get reduced to being just more of the same, another piece of your system. There's no room for real, radical otherness here. And you have to understand, for Levinas, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical game. He saw this very impulse in his own teacher, Heidegger. The danger, as Levinas saw it, is that when we get so caught up in the big quest for being, we can end up with a system that just swallows people whole. It erases what makes them unique, what makes them different. And that's not just a mistake in metaphysics. For Levinas, it's a huge ethical failure. So the big question is, how does this tidy, totalizing world fall apart? Well, it's not because I decide to think differently or come up with some clever new argument. For Levinas, it happens through a violent, completely unchosen event. The encounter with the face of the other. This contrast here is everything. See, in totality, the other person is an object in my world. I'm in control. But the face isn't an object at all. Levinas calls it a visitation, an epiphany. It's infinite. It's something I can never, ever fully grasp or possess. The face doesn't just fit into my world, it shatters it from the outside. And we need to be crystal clear on this, because it's absolutely crucial for your own phenomenological practice. Levinas is not talking about describing someone's nose and eyes. The face is a phenomenological event. It's that moment when you experience another's total vulnerability, their defenselessness. And it's right there in that vulnerability that you feel this ethical earthquake that suddenly makes you question your own power, your own freedom. So this calling into question isn't some gentle suggestion. The moment you encounter the face, you are immediately placed under a command. And this command is absolute, you didn't choose it, and it is fundamentally asymmetrical. Now, the key thing to get here is that this isn't some social rule we learn from our parents. For Levinas, this is the original ethical statement. The sheer vulnerability of the face is the command, thou shalt not kill. It's a resistance to my power that has nothing to do with physical strength, but everything to do with ethics. As a phenomenologist, this is the experience you're trying to describe, that instant where your own freedom to do whatever you want smacks right into its absolute ethical limit. And this is where Levinas really breaks from centuries of ethical thought. This relationship is not a fair two-way street. It's not a contract that says, hey, I'll be responsible for you if you'll be responsible for me. No, it's just, I am responsible, full stop. My obligation comes first. It's absolute, and it doesn't matter one bit what the other does or owes me in return. This is a great way to see just how different this is from someone like Martin Buber. Buber's famous I-thou relationship. It's this beautiful, symmetrical meeting of equals. Levinas says the ethical encounter is nothing like that. The other approaches me from a height, not because they're a king or a boss, but because, ethically speaking, their vulnerability makes them my master. They command my responsibility. So what does this infinite, lopsided responsibility actually do to the self? Well, this is where Levinas gets to the absolute core of what it means to be a subject. It means that who I am, at my very foundation, is defined by being one for the other.
This is the mind-bending idea of substitution. See, for Levinas, it's not like I exist first as an I, and then I decide to be responsible. No, my subjectivity, my very self, is made of this responsibility. He says I'm a hostage to the other, called to substitute myself for them, to take on their suffering. It's a kind of passivity that's more passive than all passivity, an obligation that finds you long before you could ever choose it.
Levinas absolutely loved this quote from Dostoevsky. And you can see why. It just perfectly captures the outrageous, almost unbelievable scale of this responsibility. This isn't about some specific thing I did wrong. It's about a fundamental state of being. I am responsible for everything, for everyone, and me most of all. I mean, just think about how far this goes. Levinas actually claims my responsibility is so total that I'm even responsible for the other person's responsibility. It's an ethical demand that's designed to be infinite, to always be one response more than I could ever possibly give. And that is what it means to be a subject.
Which brings us to the final, revolutionary conclusion of this whole journey. If the self is literally forged in an ethical command, well, then ethics can't just be one topic in philosophy among others. It has to be the root system that everything else grows out of. For centuries, Western philosophy has put other things first. Ontology, the study of being, or epistemology, the study of knowledge. Levinas comes along and says, that's a mistake. Before I can even ask what is or how do I know, I have already been summoned by the other. That ethical relationship is the precondition for literally every other experience I can have.
So here's the argument, plain and simple, in 3 steps. 1, the encounter with the other's face happens to me before I'm even fully aware of myself as an I. 2, that first encounter is fundamentally an ethical demand. And 3, therefore, my very self is, as Levinas says, knotted in ethics from the very beginning, before it's a thinking self or a being self.
And that's where we'll leave it for today, at a huge philosophical crossroads. After spending all this time exploring radical freedom with fingers like Sartre, Levinas, just drops this ultimate challenge on us. If your very self only exists because of a duty to another that you never chose, what on earth does that do to the concept of freedom we've been working with? In this landscape of infinite responsibility, where do you even begin to find your own? That's the question I want you to carry into your work this week.